I just want to, Renee Elmers, our county chair for Cumberland County, is on her way up here to welcome you all. She's on her way. All right, well, while we wait, I can sing you a song. Any offer? Any break? You're supposed to come sit.
All right, hi, my name is Rene Elmers. I'm the chairman here for Cumberland County. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And I also want to recognize one of our current elected officials, Diane Wheatley, is here today. So thank you, Diane. And we also have our other current elected official, John Zoka, who's on stage. All right, before we get started, I want to go ahead and start with the invocation, which is going to be done by our treasurer, Mr. Richard Burton.
I am not Richard Burton. Richard's a little older than I am. Anyway, that's fine. It happens all the time. I used to get mail for Richard Burton. So. Let's pray. Would you please stand with me as we pray? Our Heavenly Father, I thank you for a beautiful day that you've given us. I thank you for your creation and the world that you have given us. I also thank you that you have commanded us to take care of this world. And I pray that as we participate in the election process, those that we elect, those that we have representing us in the state legislature as well as the city and in our Congress in Washington, D.C., that we would choose people that are interested in our world and in our families and in our homes and in just the way we do life. I thank you for this opportunity to hear from each of these candidates for the 4th District, and I ask that you would give them wisdom as they answer, give them the right words, that we might be able to discern how we should vote. I thank you now for this day. In Jesus' name, amen. Just remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Richard Button. All right, before I turn it over to Susan Chapman, who is our first vice chair and will be the moderator for this event, I just wanted to mention a couple things. That over here to the right, we have a voter registration table, and everyone must be registered by January 31st to attend our county convention and become a delegate. And that is Monday. So if you're not registered with an address here in Cumberland County and want to attend the convention, you can register right over here today. The other thing I wanted to mention, the FRWC, the Fayetteville Republican Women's Club, is selling tickets to their event at Gates 4 on February 19th. And there's tickets over here if you would like some. And what we're doing after the event, you'll see some ballot boxes over here by the door. Everybody should have received a ticket when you checked in. And once the debate is done, you can go ahead and vote with the straw poll. So we're going to have an in-house straw poll. And for those watching on Facebook Live, we're going to have an online straw poll. So if you don't have a ticket, there should be plenty over here by the door. Make sure you get one of those and you can vote before you leave today. So now I'm going to introduce our moderator, Susan Chapman. And what she's going to do is go ahead and explain the rules real quickly so the audience and the candidates know exactly what's going on.
As Bree said, I'm Susan Chapman. I am the first vice chair for the Cumberland County GOP. For those of you who don't know me, which is probably most of you, recently moved here from Connecticut a year ago. We decided to leave Connecticut and come down north to North Carolina. My son was stationed here at Fort Bragg, moved down here, and he says, "Mom, I'm getting out of the Army." So my son left me, and here I am. But I am happy to be here. My husband was stationed here in the early 90s, so it's not my first time here, but boy, it's changed a lot since we were last here. But I was the Republican candidate for Secretary of the State for Connecticut the last time around. So I had the privilege of running with 10 candidates for governor. So I'm well experienced with dealing with a lot of candidates on the stage. And it's a big job. But as I spoke to all of them, the biggest thing today is we are going to keep to time. When Linda, raise your hand. Linda McAllister, our timekeeper, she is going to hold up paddles. So if you want to look, when you're speaking, look towards Linda so she can show you where you're at with your time. And when she rings the bell, you are what? Done. As I told all the candidates, I'm a former military wife. I've got 3 children, and we were never late for anything. So we are going to keep this debate moving. I think as having run for office before, I know how hard it is to be a candidate and put the time and effort into it. So to start off with, I think we should give all of our candidates a round of applause for coming out here and doing this. So we're going to have a pretty simple forum. We're going to, do you have any questions about the timekeeping? You guys got that? Okay. For all candidates, I've told you that each group of 3, the microphone in front of you is the one that you will use to answer your questions. You can hold it, stand at it, however you feel most comfortable answering. So all the candidates are going to have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. I will ask them a series of questions, depending on time. We'll see how many we get through, but every candidate will have an opportunity to answer a question. They all get 90 seconds. We will allow for rebuttals only if another candidate calls another candidate out, which I would really hope that would not happen, because you're here today to convince us to vote for you and why you're the best candidate. So I would discourage that if possible, but it's a free country, you can do what you want. So after that, after we've done all of our questions, and just so you know, the questions we got from the board, and then we asked the general public to submit questions. So the chair and I got together, went over all the questions, and we kind of just tried to group them together based on topic. Obviously, as I always tell people, there are 1,000 items out there that you could talk about, but we don't have time for all of them. So hopefully we've chosen topics that are meaningful to you. But after the debate, if you want a clarification on an answer or something you wanted to hear about from another candidate, we will have time afterwards for you. We have about 45 minutes for you guys to mingle with the candidates afterwards and either ask some new questions, follow up with them, pledge your support, whatever you'd like. But after the debate, as Bree said, we have the straw poll over there, so please don't leave without putting your ticket in the box, because that'll be very important to our candidates to gauge how things went for them today. So we are down one candidate, Christine Villaverde, I hope I said it right. She is not well and was not able to attend, so her campaign manager is going to speak for her when it's her time with the 2-minute introduction. So we are actually ahead of schedule, so we are perfect. So Michael Andriani will be our very first candidate to introduce himself.
Thank you very much. I'm Michael Andriani, for those who don't know me. So there's a lot of issues that are going on in our country right now, and the main ones that I'm running on are medical freedom, to the ability to make your own decisions about your own body. Also, ending these tyrannical COVID restrictions, as well as election integrity. So I come from a family of service. I'm 4th generation Army, 3rd generation Army officer. I was a graduate of the Virginia Military Institute. I had a 4-year Army ROTC scholarship. I'm a graduate of the Army Air Assault and Airborne Schools. And as a commissioned officer, I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And I want to continue serving that oath for you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Devan Barber. Devan, I'm sorry.
I'll take this out. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Good afternoon. First off, thank you to the Cumberland County Republican Party and Ms. Bree for putting this together and having this and having us. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to everyone here for taking the initiative to participate, and everyone watching online for taking the initiative to be part of the process. My name's DeVan Barber. I'm from Johnston County, Benson, in the district, right up the highway in 95, where I live with my wife and Brittany and our two beautiful children, Lainey, Kate, and Van. I've lived in the district up there in Benson my whole life. I grew up, raised in a family that stressed the importance of service to community and service to others. And I was raised working in a family business where I was taught early the value of hard work and the dollar that hard work provided. I'm one of us. I'm not a politician. I'm not a millionaire. I'm one of us. And I'm running for Congress because I think that we need one of us in Washington, D.C. And I could stand up here all day and list, a resume like a Walgreens receipt, but I'm not going to do that. There's information at the back of the room here, and you can go online to devanbarber.com to see anything you want about who I am, where I come from, and what I stand on. But I do want to take this opportunity to mention very quickly, there are two issues that we're not going to be asked about today. That's the right to life and the Second Amendment. And while I have the opportunity, I want to assure everyone in this room and everyone online under the sound of my voice that as your next congressman, I will unapologetically fight every single day for the right of the unborn and the right for us to keep and bear arms. And as long as I'm your congressman, those are two rights in which this government shall never infringe. I appreciate you having me. I appreciate everyone being here and look forward to continuing this conversation, not only today, but for the weeks to come.
All right, our next candidate is Renee Borghese.
Ooh, sorry. I'm a little taller too, so I figured I'd take it out. Good afternoon. I am Renee Borghese, and I thank you guys so much for coming out today, and again to Bree and Fayetteville Republicans for putting this on. So I am a nurse by trade. I've spent the last 31 years of my professional career providing care and ensuring that the people across the great state of North Carolina have the access to the care that they need. I don't work at the bedside anymore. Mostly what I do now is from the business side of things, strategy, budgeting, trying to streamline medical processes where people don't necessarily want to see things streamlined. And I think the thing that has really been eye-opening to me over the last several years is how much streamlining we really need to see in our government. So my son, if you've had an opportunity to get to the back of the room where my table is, my son Ryan is one of the gentlemen standing back there. And he and his fiancée shared with me not all that long ago that they were going to get married. And we were super excited about that. And I started thinking to myself, I might just get a grandchild one day. Like he's found himself someone that he wants to spend the rest of his life with. And rather than having that immediate excitement, I started getting scared because when we look around at our nation, it is not the same nation that we all grew up. And our rights are being plucked away, and they're not even trying to hide it. So I think that I have spent 31 years in healthcare fighting for what's right and fighting to take care of people, and I want to continue that on a grander scale and represent each of you so that you have a voice. And I don't have any intention as your congresswoman of sitting up on Capitol Hill and never coming back to hearing what's going on. It's frustrating now because we don't have voices, and we've got to make it stop. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to thank Grace over there on the bow. She's doing extraordinary work. Our next candidate up to speak is Bill Brewster.
Thank you very much. I do have a question before I continue. I am the new guy on the block. I am from the Charlotte area until I was relocated here for business. Does anybody have the answer why President Biden will never be impeached? Anybody got an idea? What's that? No, because we as Republicans believe on carrying a baby full term. Now, I'm a businessman, I'm a military officer, and we have some fine military people here. The thing that we need to look for in our leadership these days is character, motivation, dedication. If you don't have those things within your soul, you're not going to be a leader. You're just going to be somebody trying to collect a paycheck. We've got enough of those in Congress. Right now, we need leadership that will stand out, that will argue, that will fight for your rights here in the 4th District. I'm Bill Brewster, and with your support, I will be your next congressman. Thank you.
Next up, Tony Calden.
Hi. So yes, I am Tony Calden, and thank you, Ms. Bree, for setting this all up. Thank you all for coming. So I spent the last 26 years of my life in the special operations community, both here at Fort Bragg with Special Forces and with the special activities side of the Central Intelligence Agency. We solve problems, and clearly we have plenty of problems. And the biggest thing we have going on right now is that our Congress men and women have forgotten that's not what they are. Right? The word Congress means meeting. So they're people of meetings. That's all they do is do meetings. And they've forgotten that they are actually representatives. They're supposed to represent us. And the House of Representatives was designed by our forefathers in mirrored image to the House of Commons from Great Britain. The House of Commoners. Our House of Representatives was never intended to be a house or a building full of our elitists in the establishment. I grew up in eastern North Carolina over in Pamlico County, and my father was a small businessman. We started out in a single wide trailer, or I started out in a single wide trailer, and watched my dad build his business. When he didn't need me, he handed me over to my uncle, who's a farmer. So, yeah, I learned how to work hard growing up. That led me, well, I went to NC State for a little bit, or I was enrolled at NC State for a little bit. The Army was calling, and it was pretty much my last resort. Was that my? Oh, I'm sorry. So I withdrew from college, enlisted. I was an enlisted soldier, one of the people. Am I done now? 10 seconds. Oh, 10 seconds. All right. So, yeah, I am truly one of you, one of the peasants and one of the commoners, and I solve problems. Thank you.
Next up is Renee Elmers.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Bree and the Cumberland County Republican Party for letting us be here today to speak to all of you. I am Rene Elmers. I represented Cumberland County in my first term when I was in Congress after being elected in 2010. I was honored to do so. I was honored to be the representative for all of our military families, Fort Bragg, and all of you. I believe number one, constituent services is the most important issue that any member of Congress has to take care of. No matter what's going on up in Washington, no matter how many debates are being taking place, the number one thing you need to be doing is taking care of your constituents back home. I had a fabulous staff. I can't take credit for it. It was my staff. Pat Fitzgerald is here with me today. She was my district director. My son Ben is here with me as well. He lived it with all of us. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly with Congress and redistricting and everything else. I am honored to say that I am a nurse and a mother. My husband, Brent, is not with us because he's working as a general surgeon this weekend. Donald Trump endorsed me in 2016. I was the first woman in Congress to endorse then candidate Donald Trump, and he returned the favor. I was honored to serve, After serving in Congress, I was appointed by Donald Trump to Health and Human Services, where I represented all of you. I saw the ups and downs in healthcare. We all have to work together on so many issues. I'm ready to do that. I ask for your vote. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Up next, Nate Robertson.
Or Nat, we're both here.
Nat, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I was just so excited.
Susan, thank you, and Bree, thank you, and the team, the whole board. Appreciate what y'all do. I fought the Democrats, and I've won. Who knows who Jack Lee is? Handful of folks. He was the last Republican mayor in Fayetteville 50 years ago. I'm honored to have served and picked up where Jack had left off because we had so many improvements. We'll talk about those as time goes on. But thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I set myself apart. You're going to hear probably 9 of the same answers for the generic Republican questions. Let me tell you how I'm different. I'm watching the paddle. I've served a large part of District 4 already as your mayor. I was voted the most responsive elected official in the county, and had a great team to work with. I see Mr. Bobby Hurst here. Bobby, thank you so much for your time on the city council as well. Had the opportunity to work with Bobby for a long time. But anyway, we'll talk about all that later. It's an honor to be here. I'm a father. I'm a husband of the luckiest woman in North Carolina. And a strong Republican. I'm a fighter, and I'm ready to fight for you. Thank you.
Alan Swain or Swan? Swain. Okay.
I'd like to thank Cumberland County GOP and Bree and Susan for hosting this, and all of you that came here. The weather participated for us, so we're fortunate. My name's Alan Swain. I'm a retired Army Colonel, 26 years. I served 2 tours at the Pentagon. I served at the White House for 2 presidents. Also was stationed here at Fort Bragg, lived just up the road off of 401 up in Kings Grant area, and flew Apaches here out of Fort Bragg. Also commanded over in Europe, and then took that command into Bosnia back in the 90s. Successful small business entrepreneur. I'm a former Wake County GOP chairman, and I'm a former U.S. congressional candidate, so I understand what this is all about. We've got a problem. We have a country that's in disarray and chaos. We have not shut down the virus. Our inflation is all over the place. They call it stagflation now. We've got foreign policy issues. We have so many things that need to be done, and it's going to take a fighter to go up there. I know DC. I came to North Carolina because I loved it when we were stationed here. My daughter and 2 of my 3 grandkids live in the area. But what I would tell you is this is probably the most important election, because not only will we potentially take back the U.S. Senate, and we have to fight, we have a chance to put someone else back in there as a Republican. We take back the House. For 2 more years, we need to make him a lame duck president. He still has executive orders. We need to hold accountable the President of the United States to do his job and man his oath. We talk about taking oaths, and he has failed to do his job. So what I would tell you is, I will fight. I will be your representative, and I will try to make a difference. But I can't do that without you voting for me at the primary. Alan Swain for Congress. Thank you.
Up next, John Silke.
running for Congress to save the country and to save our way of life. We have two major threats that's facing us today. We have the external threats, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. We have the internal threats, the failed presidency of Joe Biden and the corrupt Democrats with their horrible policies that's ruining our way of life. I've lived a life of service. I spent over 20 years in the Army as an infantry officer. I spent the last 10 years as a representative in the North Carolina House of Representatives. George Washington lived his life by the motto, deeds, not words. So what have I done for you already up in Raleigh? I've been involved in every major tax policy decision in the last 10 years, which has saved cumulatively individuals and businesses over $14 billion. That's money you keep in your pockets, businesses keep in their pockets to spend. In the terms of energy, I've become a nationally acclaimed energy expert, not because I work for the power company, because I taught myself. House Bill 589 in 2017 has already saved $350 million for ratepayers. That's if you pay an electric bill across the state, you're a ratepayer. $350 million to date. Last year, House Bill 951 is fundamentally realigned how energy is being brought onto the grid, and it's going to save more money, and it's setting up our energy industry and your ratepayers' stability for the next 20 years. Being in the military, I understand what it's like. I've passed numerous bills that supported active duty military, veterans, spouses, and their families. Most recently, House Bill 83, which is, I've worked 6 years to get this passed, and we finally got it passed, which is no state income tax on military retirement pay. So if you're looking for deeds, not words, I'm your guy. We need a leader who's ready day one to go to DC, make things happen. I'm that guy. I'm John Silke. I ask for your support, and I ask for your vote.
So we have campaign manager for Christine Villaverde. Oh, maybe not. Maybe over here.
Stand over here. Hey y'all, good afternoon. My name is John Pazer. I am the campaign manager for Christine Villaverde. And is that there we are. Okay. Hey y'all, let me try that again. I know a lot of you in the room from my time as helping out Dan Bishop in his special election down here in Fayetteville, also as regional field director last year for the Raleigh area in the victory cycle. However, I'm not here to talk about me today. What I am here to is to introduce you to Christine Villaverde. And many of you have met Christine. She is a hard campaigner, and she wanted nothing more than to be here today. However, she has had a lingering cough the last couple of weeks, and she went to the doctor yesterday to get a clean bill of health. Unfortunately, she wound up with pneumonia. So anyway, she will be back on the campaign trail as soon as possible, I assure you that. But I'm not here to put words into Christine's mouth today. What I am here to do is to draw your attention to a couple of things. First off is her website, votevillaverde.com. If you don't know Christine, please check out the website, votevillaverde.com. The second thing, in y'all's seat, you should have had a packet. There's a 3-page packet talking about Christine Villaverde. Page 1 is her bio. It will tell you pretty much everything you need to know and probably some things you don't about Christine. It is rather lengthy, it is wordy, but that is because she has done a lot in her life, and it will, I encourage you to take the minute or two to read that. Page 2 of that is an endorsement. Christine Villaverde has been endorsed by General Michael Flynn. And I'm going to take just a moment here to put in a plug for the Cumberland County GOP. General Flynn will be here for a fundraiser for the Cumberland GOP April 10th. If you don't have a ticket yet, I encourage you to see Bree or somebody from the executive committee to pick that up today. And finally, I'm running out of time here, but the third page, final page, is our kickoff event. I encourage you to come out to that. It is going to be February 28th in Dunn at Western Sizzlin. Thank you very much. Please check out the website, votevillaverde.com. And I'm looking forward to becoming a spectator for the rest of this. Thank y'all.
Thank you to, is this on? You can hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, well, thank you to all the candidates. So I think we had a good trial run there with keeping up with the time. I appreciate it. We want to respect all the candidates' time to answer questions, so let's keep up the good work. So is my time up? So we did the introductions alphabetically, and we will do the closing remarks reverse alphabetical, but to keep you on your toes, I will be randomly calling candidates to answer questions, but they will all answer the same question, just not in the same order. So it'll keep them awake. So I am going to call on Bill Brewster for the very first question. Who will you support for Speaker of the House and why?
As far as the Speaker of the House, I would not support Mitch McConnell. I would probably go more towards a lesser congressman or a woman that has been in the House for at least a minimum of 5 to 10 years. We need to get younger thinking in Congress. It's the good old boys club. Everybody knows that. Everybody complains about it. Well, we as Republicans need to send people to Congress that can change that. The main reason I would support a younger congressman is vitality, forward thinking, and most of all, creativity. I'm not saying now, I'm a 55-year-old farm boy from Maryland, D.C. area. I'm not saying that I have all the answers, because if anybody tells you have all the answers, they're lying to you. But the most important thing is someone that is not in the limelight to be the Speaker of the House. That's the kind of person that you would probably want to be in the Speaker of the House, because one, they are going to fight and they're going to work hard to do their job. Thank you.
Great. Alan Swain?
It's not going to be an easy choice. A lot of people probably think that Minority Leader McCarthy has a very good shot. He probably is, but he hasn't reined in the 13 that voted for the infrastructure bill, so I have concern over that. He hasn't done enough to call out Cheney and Kinzinger with regard to the January 6th commission, if you whatever they're calling themselves, where we're outnumbered and we didn't get to put our candidates, our actual representatives, Jordan and Banks, on that committee. Steve Scalise is a good man. I would seriously consider Steve, but he's said that he will not run if McCarthy jumps in for the House. So then you have to maybe potentially look at someone else. That person might be Jim Banks. He runs the House Study Committee. Jim's on his 3rd term. He'll be up for his 4th term this year. He's well-liked, he's highly versed, and he's younger, just like Mr. Brewster just talked about. Sometimes we need some fresh faces. Well, you got a bunch of fresh faces up here, maybe not based on our white hair and things of that nature, but I would tell you, it's the kind of thing that'll make a difference. So we need to make a tough call, but no committee assignments can be held over my head to decide who's going to be the next House Majority Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next, Renee Elmers.
Thank you, and this is a great question. I don't want to throw any names out there of folks who are there in Congress right now, because I think that actually kind of gives power to people before we even know who's running, right? I think that the important thing is that we look at the character of that individual. The process is very similar to voting, the way that we vote for candidates. Within the conference, that's how we will be voting. I want to hear what each person who puts themselves out there has to say. I want to know who is going to be their staff, who is going to help them make decisions. Because behind the scenes, what you don't see is what really happens. That person is the face of the speakership, but that isn't necessarily where the decisions are being made. I'm also open to the idea of someone being Speaker of the House that isn't even in Congress right now, which by constitutional right can happen. We don't have to do things the way they've always been done, which is unfortunately many times the way things happen in Washington. Well, that's the way we've always done it. I think it's time, there's no better time than now to make that change. Let's look at who the candidates are, let's listen to what they have to say, and make the best choice. And because what we can't do is let Nancy Pelosi be Speaker of the House again.
Okay, Michael?
Excellent. I'm really glad that you picked me next because tacking on what you said. So I have more of a, I'm going to answer this question a little bit differently. So there's a bit of a theory. So the idea is that, once we take the House back in 2022, we'll be able to pick a Speaker of the House, right? So there's an idea floating around that, the Speaker of the House that you can pick could be Donald Trump. And so what I mean by that is that this way he becomes Speaker of the House, right? We take the House, we have the majority. He can initiate articles of impeachment against Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and then because he's the Speaker of the House, he's third in line for the presidency. He becomes the president 2 years early, and then once 2024 comes, he'll say, well, I'm just going to drop this, and then I'll just, run for the presidency. So that's what's not
All right, John Silke?
Thank you. Hypothetical questions are always the hardest to answer because a million things could be happening between now and then. So I don't really have a favorite pick currently, either serving in the House or perhaps not serving in the House. One requirement that I'm dead set on is they have to be a Republican. Okay, no more Democrats, which means we have to take the House, which means we have to have successful elections all across the United States. When the election for Speaker goes on, it's similar to what you're seeing here. You have a number of different people that might be interested, and they have to pitch themselves, and then the conference decides who it is. So who I might want now they might not even run for Congress next time. So they got to be a Republican. They have to believe in Republican values and have lived by Republican values and have voted for Republican values. So whoever that person is, when I'm there, that's who I'll vote for. Thank you.
Devan?
Thank you. This is a great question, and I'll echo what the rest have said. Hypothetical questions are the fun ones. I'm not from D.C. I don't have years in D.C. I don't know the folks in D.C. I like to wear that as a badge of honor. First thing you'd have to do is see who's even running. So first we do is we take a look and we see who's running. We know we're going to vote for a Republican. However, as your congressman, I'm not just going to vote for a Republican. I'm going to be sure to vote for a conservative as Speaker of the House. There are Republicans in Congress right now that are, in line and in a position to take on such positions of authority that, talk the game, but have they walked the game, and are they going far enough? There are folks up there that talk about stopping mandates, but what about peeling back some of the mandates and regulations and giving some of our freedoms back? I don't think it's enough to stop where we are. I think we have to go the opposite direction. So you want to go up there and you want to not only vote for a Republican, but we want to vote for a conservative, because in Johnston County, we like to say, all hat and no cowboy. You know what I'm talking about. You want to make sure you've got somebody that's going to do what we need them to do. So first thing I would do is take a look at who's running, and then, just to be honest, I'd be interested to see who President Trump would endorse. And that endorsement would carry some weight, because if President Trump trusts him to be a true Republican to live by the code, then they'd probably have my support as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee Borghese?
So the beauty, can you guys hear me? Is this thing on? The beauty is that based on the current administration, this bar is set super low, right? So no matter what conservative or Republican that we put in, when, not if, when we win back the House, it's going to be a night and day difference than what we're seeing these days. I'm going to say, I have to echo a lot of what the folks up here have also said, is that we've got to look and see who all is kind of put their name in the hat. And then, most importantly, look at not only their voting record, but do they show up? I think one of the most frustrating things is people don't even bother to show up to vote. And COVID certainly hasn't helped things because there's been a lot different mechanisms in place. But I think that people need to put their money where their mouth is, and whoever it is that I would put my support behind is going to have to earn it, just like I'm asking to help you let me earn your vote and your support today. It's not just a given, and it shouldn't be because deals are being made behind the scenes and committee appointments and things like that. It needs to be earned.
Nat?
Thank you, Susan. I think I'd said earlier that I was a fighter, and spending 12 years as your representative locally, you learn to fight for what you absolutely believe in, compromise when you have to, but be careful when you fall on your sword. So with all the variables and all the unknowns, quite honestly, at this point, I would likely support for speaker who the leadership or who the conference supports, especially going in as a freshman, because I've got to build allies. I've got to build a team, and the best way to do that is to get in the pack. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That brings us to Tony.
So some of you may have heard me say before that there are three things that I'm going to reference on any issue you're ever going to ask me about. First and foremost, the Ten Commandments. Well, our Constitution was modeled after those Ten Commandments. Founding Fathers looked to the Ten Commandments and the Bible to write our Constitution. The second is our Constitution. And the third is my constituents. You. Who do you want to be the leader of the House, the Speaker of the House? That's the most important question. It's not who I want. It's not for me to decide. It's for you to decide. That's why I say I'm running as a representative, not a congressperson. Now, I will tell you who I won't vote for. It's any Republican who has a history, once or 100 times, of laying down for the left and compromising our rights.
Thank you. So our next question is, what can the federal government do to address the current crime issues facing our country? And I'm going to start with Renee Elmers.
Thank you, Susan. Well, number one, Congress. We're in a little bit of a difficult place right now with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House and Joe Biden in the White House, which I'm sorry, I don't believe that he's a legitimate president. I don't believe the election was correct. And we can have that conversation, but we need to look forward. So let's look forward. What can Congress do? Well, number one, it gets back to making sure that the Republicans take over the House and once again are in the majority. I had, again, the honor to be voted by you to go to Washington in 2010 where there was a red wave. I was part of the red wave that flipped the House to Republican. That was a great honor for me. We were able to accomplish a lot, but Barack Obama was president. We have to make sure that we have the House, the Senate, and obviously we will have to deal with Joe Biden until we can get another Republican president elected. Anything that I do legislatively has to do, and I brought my props here, my Constitution. You can see it. It's worn, it's tattered, but I use it. It's the lifeline to any vote in Congress that I put forward. And this was my voter card. This belonged to me. It's got my picture on it, but this is your card. This is the card that I used. And I will work hard to use it again. Thank you.
Next up, Devan.
Thank you. It's a great question.
Thank you.
I would support and fully fund the police and law enforcement from one C to the other C, full stop, without a doubt. That's step one. Step two is we have to end the catch and release program, if you call it, that DAs and liberals across the nation have started utilizing on our streets for our criminals. Look in New York, look at Houston, look at California. All of the crimes that are happening now and the surge in crime here lately are all from criminals that have been caught and released and have criminal records a mile long. The young lady that lost her life in California the other week at the furniture store. The criminal has been arrested 12 times all across the nation. It's quite simple. This new crime wave is nothing new. There's nothing new. That the only thing that's supporting this new crime wave is the lack of respect that police and law enforcement are getting from their leaders and the catch and release DAs that are not holding their feet to the law and living by the letter of the law.
Thank you. Nat?
I've got a history of fixing the crime problem. I think if you go back and look, the statistics talk for themselves. We reduced crime in the city of Fayetteville by double digits year over year. We worked together as a legislative and governing body with the police department, police chief. What I would do in Washington, D.C. is decentralize the Department of Justice, make sure that the states and the communities are responsible for themselves, and make sure that they have the resources that the federal government is supposed to provide. Making government bigger to fix a problem that is really a local problem is not the answer.
All right, up next, Bill.
You say Bill?
Yes, I said you, Bill.
We have two types of crimes. You have federal crimes and you have state and local crimes. Well, on the federal side, we can enact laws to protect us federally. But you got to realize 99% of the crimes that are done is done within the state. It's not done on federal property. At the same time, we've got to look at this number. Right now, on an average year, we incarcerate about 600,000 people at $50,000 per year. Now, there are some good programs for the prisoners, if they choose to take them. If a prisoner chooses to take and do a trade school, they have a 57% chance of not being re-incarcerated. But right now, that's not happening. We're getting a 50% re-incarceration rate, which is really high. So that means 50 out of every 100 people that go in jail are coming back. As your congressman or as your representative, I can only enact laws based on the federal side. I can't do it, that is done on your local side. Now, if they will let us enact the laws federally to override the state, I'll do it. But for right now, I can't. So we got to remember, state and federal, it's definitely a part.
Okay, Alan?
The left has perpetrated a culture of lawlessness. We're living that every day in everything that happens around us. If you don't think it's coming to your neighborhood, it's here already. The numbers just aren't there. Look at what's happening in Charlotte. Look what's happening in the Raleigh Triangle area. Look what's happening in the Triad. 12 U.S. cities broke their murder rates last year. Some of them hadn't seen that in 20 plus years. We have zero bail DAs. We have large cities that are creating massive problems. The city of Philadelphia exceeded their murder rate by 2.5 times last year, and actually had more murders than New York City and LA, which is kind of amazing to think about that. The city of brotherly love only loves criminals. When you look at what happened, President Trump came across with criminal justice reform a couple years ago. Last year, when all the riots were going on, the US Senate took the initiative for some police reform. That was squashed by the Democrats. They don't want police reform. There is a problem that's festering in this nation, and if we don't do something about it now, I'm committed to helping with Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina to make a difference and do the police reform. Thank you.
Tony?
So I said I was a problem solver. If you're going to solve a problem, you got to go to the root, right? As Americans, we like to skim the surface, or from any of my Marine Corps friends, it's wave tops. We don't want to get dirty and actually get to the root of things. The reality is, crime in America today is committed by folks who see no other option. Until we start raising our children with morals, characters, and principles, and show them options other than crime, this crime is going to continue. We could double the police officers, we could rid our nation and all our cities of the weak chiefs and sheriffs. It's not going to change anything. It's supply and demand. There are so many young men and women in America today that simply see no other option. So it's going to start in our schools, and we have to address the welfare state. It's a perpetuation. It's been going on since the 60s. So yeah, we have to start at the root of the problem, and that's the children. Raise them with some character and some principles, and the federal government, education, school choice, that will allow parents in the inner cities to allow their children to go to better schools and break that cycle of crime.
Renee Borghese?
So without fail, we have to back our police. And while that's not a federal issue to back the police, then every one of us needs to link our arms and make sure that at a state level that happens and that we don't pull the funding away. But let's think about from a federal perspective and put this in real tangible terms, in terms of things that we've experienced in our lifetimes. And probably one of the most palpable events is 9/11. And if you think of the people who probably had information in the different silos of law enforcement from a federal perspective that could have shared that information with the other groups, then there's a good chance that we can avoid things like that. Government is siloed just like many other large companies are, and you've got to make sure that communication needs to go both ways. The states need to be aware of the concerns, and the federal government needs information back from the states. You certainly can't get in the weeds about everything, but imagine if we could look back and say that there was an opportunity to prevent 9/11 simply by opening up the lines of communication.
Michael?
So I think it's pretty simple when it comes to crime. If you want to prevent crime or stop from happening, you need to just enforce the law. And that includes getting people who are not afraid to do that. So I kind of look at it in three different ways. So if you look at, I think the first one's our leadership. So I won't say any names, but a certain someone, while they were running for Vice President of the United States, was paying money to release people from bail in Seattle and Portland and all those other areas. So that's got to be dealt with. Second one is, with people within this country. So, citizens, Americans that are breaking the law. We need to hold the line and make sure that, they don't break the law anymore by enforcing it. And then third, it comes from outside of the state, outside the country, but people coming in. So, all these illegal immigrants who come from the South, coming to America, instead of just, having them come into a station and get registered and then just releasing them or flying them to other places around the country where they continue to do stuff. If they were here previously and they committed a crime, they need to be deported. Or when we're having people fly into the country from other places, such as Afghanistan, we need to make sure that those people are also vetted, because some of those people have also committed some crimes. So that's how I look at it.
And next will be John.
Thank you. It's been a while, so would you please repeat the question one more time for me?
Sure. What can the federal government do to address the current crime situation in the country?
Thank you. And I remembered it, but I want everybody else to hear that, because the question is, what can the federal government do to address the crime situation in the country? If you don't like people throwing firebombs down at the market house, get a new mayor, get a new city council, get a new police chief. If you don't want catch and release bail, make sure you keep a Republican legislature up there, because that's changed at the state level. Okay, so what happens at the federal level? What happens at the federal level, they have law enforcement agencies as well. Border control. First thing we need to do as Congress is not rely on the president to, by executive order, which we've all seen can be undone. We need to pass an act of Congress, fund completion of the border wall, make sure it happens. And then after that, we have to fully fund the border police to make sure that they patrol not just the southern border, but the northern border and every other port of entry. What else does the federal government control? They control the FBI. I don't know about you, but I'm not real happy with the Federal Bureau of Investigation these last few years. There needs to be an investigation of the politicization of the FBI that needs to be cleaned up. They need to go back to their core functions and not get involved in politics. Any national police force like the FBI that gets involved in politics is a road to nothing good happening, which we've seen. We have to clean that up. And last but not least, when ICE goes to cities like the great city of Charlotte, and the police department there refuses to hold illegal aliens, it's called ICE detainers, they refuse it. It's federal law. They don't do it. Well, there has to be a way to tie federal funding to non-compliance from states and municipalities. Thank you.
Okay, on to question number 3. What will be your legislative agenda, and what committees would you like to serve on? And we will start with Alan.
If I'm fortunate enough to be elected, there's several committees I'd like to work on. My first would be, going back to what I talked about earlier, holding the president and the executive branch accountable. I would want to work on the House Oversight Committee. House Oversight is the checks and balance of what we need to do to hold the current administration accountable. Being a former military officer, I'd like to work on the House Armed Services Committee. I think peace through strength, so we don't have some of the debacles we've got foreign policy-wise right now. We can prove that we mean business as a military. But I also want to do is help our veterans. I want to help our veterans for one reason, because I don't believe that the bureaucracy is moving fast enough to help some of our veterans that are asking for disability, and I don't think they're getting their right medical benefits. So I would like to work on the House Armed Services Committee. Now, there's one other committee I would very much be interested in because of the debacle at the southern border, and that is the House Judiciary Committee. And the reason why is they have a subcommittee on immigration and citizenship. That's the real root cause of what's happening to us on our southern border, and we need some reform. We need it bad, it was long overdue, so I'll be part of the next Gang of 8 if I'm fortunate enough. Alan Swain for Congress. Thank you.
Renee Borghese.
Like many of us, I'm sure, have spent a fair amount of time thinking about this. When we look around at some of the things that are going on in this nation, there are no shortage of issues. And just like there are no shortage of issues, there are no shortage of committees. I think that one of the things, and it hits us all in our pocketbooks, is the fact that we're seeing so much inflation And the tax there, we're increasing the number of people that work for the IRS. We haven't had a balanced budget. I think I would be interested in working for the appropriations and the budget committees. While I'm not a business person by trade, I've spent, like I said, 30 years in healthcare. What I have learned is that if you don't keep control of the pocketbook, then everything is going to run amok. And we're dealing with that right now. If you look around, I mean, I've seen the issues with the supply chain are just absolutely insane now. I tried to buy dog food for my puppy the other day, and I had to go to 3 different stores before I could find it. We've got to get control and stop this insane spending, and I would like to roll my sleeves up and be a part of that. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't kind of put all of this healthcare background to some good use. The other thing that we all feel in our pocketbooks is healthcare expense as well as pharmaceuticals, and we've got to do something to rein that in and get control of that. Thank you, Renee Borghese.
John?
I wasn't expected to be called this early. I've been at the end the rest of the time, so
That's
thank
why
you.
I told you I was going to make sure I was staying
Okay.
awake down
Caught me
there.
off guard. I'm awake. I've spent a lot of time over the last 10 years in tax reform, in energy policy, in broadband expansion, and in agriculture. The first committee I'd like to serve on is the Armed Services Committee. One of the 2 biggest industries, the second largest industry in North Carolina is military and all the defense contractors that go along with it. So to make sure that Fort Bragg and the rest of our military installations get the right amount of resources, I definitely want to be on armed services. Having served at Fort Bragg, I think is a real benefit. The other committee I'd like to be on is the Commerce Committee. They deal with energy, and energy runs America. One of the great things during the President Trump era was we were energy independent. We're not now. I would like to get back to that. I'd like to bring my expertise to the table, working in the Commerce Committee. They also deal with broadband. I've dealt a lot of broadband. Like I said in my intro, I'm ready to go day one. Thank you.
Okay, Michael?
All right, just want to make sure I have this all in front of me because there's a lot of committees you can join. So I'd be interested in joining the Appropriations Committee because both times I was deployed, I had 30 contracts that were worth $40 million, and I also have a background in contracting, so I think it'd be good for appropriations, armed services, as someone who served the Army, budget, the budget's just going everywhere, so I think we really need to reel that back. When I was deployed, I saved $3 million of U.S. government money, and as we all know, the U.S. government doesn't have any money, it has taxpayer money. So I saved $3 million of our money, looking at just all the frivolous spending that was going on over there. Education and labor, because I believe that our children should not be indoctrinated, and that, we have plenty of people here who can work, so education and labor. Energy and commerce, I'm very much pro-nuclear. I'm really big into President Eisenhower's proclamation in 1953 on the Atoms for Peace campaign that he had after he became president, and I think we're really past it when it comes to nuclear, and we need to get back into that. Ethics, that's obviously important. We got Homeland Security, which, is, taking an oath to defend the nation and its people. I'm all about that, obviously. Natural resources, I want to make sure we're energy independent again, like we were under President Trump just a year ago. $1.50 gas to $3. That's I'm not about that. There's anyone here. And science, space, and technology. I'm interested in that. Small business, mom and pop shops, transportation infrastructure is important too. Veterans Affairs, and I continue more about that at the time. So
Your time's
there's
up.
a lot of things I'd like to do. Thank you.
The bell has rung. Renee Elmers?
Thank you. I want to start with legislation. Number one, we need to shoot down the Green New Deal. We need to make sure that we are not part of Paris Accords. We need to put in place protections against CRT in our schools, and I support an American all-parents Bill of Rights, so that we actually have protections in place so that we can do something on a lawful congressional effort there. But I want to support things in healthcare. Healthcare is too expensive, and there are reasons for that. That's within the system, and it needs to be addressed. There are many issues in North Carolina where families are spending money that they should not have to. Drug prices are too high. Insurance is inaccessible. Access to care in North Carolina, especially our rural communities, is in great need. Those are all issues. I sat on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. I also sat on agriculture, small business, and I would love to be part of any of those. Also foreign affairs. But I also want to help our veterans. You know, I worked here in Fayetteville at the VA nursing home. I know that that is a very, very important issue, and I want to continue to support our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony?
My legislative agenda is to support the needs and wants of North Carolina's District 4, the people and the industries here. So yeah, Armed Services Committee, clearly that one's near and dear to my heart. I was just over on Fort Bragg and at Camp Lejeune touring barracks of enlisted men and women. There are projects, abandoned inner city projects that are worse off than they are. We spend billions on the military-industrial complex on high-dollar items like F-35s, just so the Navy can kick them into the ocean. We're not taking care of our ground pounders, our foot soldiers, our enlisted men and women. Agriculture, that's huge for this district. And of course, Homeland Security. I just spent last week down in Texas on the border. Good friend of mine, Lieutenant Colonel, recently retired Stuart Scheller, one of the few officers that had the spine to stand up and speak out against this administration. He and I are good friends, and we went to see the border for ourselves. Can't dime him out, but I have a lot of friends just because of the natural career path of special operations guys getting out and going into law enforcement. I have many friends in the Border Patrol, and we got a little unofficial tour while we were down there. And I tell you, it's way worse than you imagine. Ultimately, I'm going to ask you what committees you want me on.
Thank you. Up next, Bill Brewster.
Being the son of a farmer, of course, agriculture, and I'm a business owner and a veteran. That covers all three. But what none of my candidates actually said to you was 95% of the time you are on subcommittees when you go to Congress, when you're first. And did anybody know that?
As far as rebuttal goes, I will say you are on a committee and you are on subcommittees of that committee.
Right, but most of the time you serve on the subcommittee.
And the committee.
So what I'm saying is, I would love to have the big three. You know, oversight, budget. But I would love to have the business, agriculture, and the veterans. That's what North Carolina's made up of. Agriculture, business, and veterans. That is our big three. That's who we need to protect. That's who we need to take care of. You and I will have to make a decision who we want in DC. Again, the big three, agriculture. That is a big thing here in North Carolina. I would love to be part of that committee. Thank you.
Nat?
So I'm not sure that my answer is going to be much different than everybody else's that's already spoken. I'm not going to Washington to represent the Robertson family. I'm going to represent you, and that would be you, the 4th District, which is Fort Bragg. Fortunately, most of Fort Bragg does fall into the district. Agriculture, as our friends in Sampson and Harnett and Johnston and a little bit of Cumberland County shares. But we all have the common interest. So if I have a choice, which I'm not sure as a freshman when we get up there that we really do have a choice, I would fight to represent you in those areas.
Well, Devan, that leaves you.
It's a great question, and I think the first part of the question was my favorite, and I don't think it got lent enough attention, but the legislative agenda. I'm running for Congress because I'm scared of the direction of our nation, and because I want to ensure my 6-year-old daughter has the same opportunities and lives in the same country that we were fortunate enough to grow up in. And I don't believe that under the current climate, under the current administration, our kids will have that opportunity. So I'm going to Congress to be a Christian, conservative fighter for the ideals and principles that made our nation the shining city on the hill it is today, to ensure that our nation remains the shining city on a hill it should be for generations to come. And I tell folks I'm 6'4" and I wear high heels to make it, to give me an advantage wearing boots, but you wear boots means something where I come from. And I'm not going to Washington to make friends. I'm going to Washington to make a change. I'm going to Washington to dig these hills in and stand up and not waver, as too many Republicans before us have. So as far as the legislative agenda goes, it's pretty simple. It's an America First future that will bring our country back to the shining city on the hill it needs to be. As far as committees, like 5 seconds, good. Last Thanksgiving, if you ate a turkey or a sweet potato, you probably got it from our district. So I would like to be on the House Agriculture Committee, Subcommittee on Livestock and Foreign Agriculture, and with Fort Bragg being the Force for Freedom for the World, House Armed Services Committee, Subcommittee on Strategic Forces.
We're not paying Grace the big bucks to ring that bell for you to keep going. All right, we're on to question number 4. Where do you stand on the recent attempts by Congress to federalize our elections, and how will you protect our state right to control elections? And we will start with Tony.
When our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, or as they were writing the Constitution, clearly their perspectives were the driving factors. And in 1760s, the word state meant nation state. It was just colloquial for them. The words evolved for us here. States' rights. States' rights. We are supposed to be independent of the federal government. The federal government, its left and right limits, its authorizations, they're clearly defined in our Constitution. Elections have to be maintained and ran by the states, just like law enforcement and the other myriads of topics that are important to us. Our government, our federal government, has overstepped its boundaries, its left and right limits, on every single topic we can bring up. And it's all because we keep laying down, and when I say we, I mean the congressmen and women, not our representatives. It's not what they do. The Republicans who have laid over and bowed down to the left. Our state is an autonomous, sovereign entity from our federal government. They don't get to dictate how we vote and how we elect our representatives.
Nat?
Seems like I was just up here. So for me, that's an easy question because I'm a small government guy, right? Federal government is too large the way that it is. So breaking that up, following the law, following the Constitution, and passing that election right back down to the states is only, it's the way that it's supposed to be. Federal government needs to get out of our lives. They need to pass everything to state and local governments.
Michael?
So I haven't taken an oath to the Constitution. I take that very seriously. So like Renee, I've had this Constitution with me for the past 10 years. It's left on my desk as a cadet at VMI, and I've carried this with me everywhere. do 2 deployments, jumping out of airplanes. I always had this right in my breast pocket when I was in the Army. So if you look at it, Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution clearly states that it is the state legislature that decides the time, place, and manner of how the elections are held, not the federal government. And as Tony mentioned, states' rights, a lot of people go, what's states' rights? States' rights is essentially the 10th Amendment, which says that any powers are not given to Congress are given to the states and to the people. And of course, that includes elections. So, yeah, so I'm pretty, well, everybody knows how I feel about that, so thanks.
Thank you. Renee Elmers.
Thank you. Of course, I am completely against federalizing our elections for the Constitution and the way that it was laid out for the states to control our election process. Having said that, I'm going to digress again and talk again about the 2020 election. And it is because of the 2020 election, presidential election, and the results that we ended up with, that is the reason that those in Washington right now are passing or trying to institute federal control of our elections. You know, Democrats are really good at floating weather balloons, and when they get away with something, they continue it and they expand it. Now, of course, it is our states. In North Carolina, we have to do everything we can to make sure that the voter rolls are clean, that people who have moved out of our state are gone, people who have died are gone. We have to make sure that the mail-in ballots or the absentee ballots are counted on the day of the election, not after. And of course, we need picture ID, voter ID put in place. Absolutely. There is no reason to not have a voter ID except that it opens the door to Democrats and voter fraud. Thank you.
DeVan?
Thank you. This ought to be an easy one for a Republican because the last election went so well for the Democrats, they want to change the rules.
Amen. Yeah.
Right? I don't trust the federal government to calculate my taxes. I'm definitely not going to trust the federal government to calculate ballots. And I think we all can agree on that. The only federal interference in elections I would support would be a federal requirement for voter ID. And would be federal limitations on early voting, one-stop voting, and absentee voting. And I would absolutely wholeheartedly support a federal ban on drop boxes for ballots. Any other type of federalization of our elections is completely off the table and is completely absurd to even entertain. And that should be quite obvious if we look at it clearly. Thank you.
How about Bill Brewster?
I don't support the federal government getting into our elections. It's run by the state, it's in our Constitution, that's the way it should be. The only thing I support from the federal government is the voter ID. I believe everybody should have an ID. I just heard a little story that some of the illegals were using arrest warrants as IDs. Really? We're going to fill the jails up more now? But when it comes to the election, it should be ran by the state, and the state. That is it. I don't believe the government ought to overreach. I believe that every state should report to the federal government of the voting, and that's it. Thank you.
Calden?
We've got our own quandary here in North Carolina. If you hadn't seen, 54% of us voted for voter ID a couple years ago. We still don't have it. We're not going to have it for 22. There's an outside chance we'll have it for 24, but we don't control the state Supreme Court. It's going to go to the state Supreme Court this year, and we may go back to square one. That's of concern. Now that's states' rights trying to solve whether we want voter ID. we've got a problem. We have a party that's in control of the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House, and the White House, and their desire is to do a complete overhaul of our election law. H.R. 1 passed. That was their number one priority, to try and keep control of Congress and the White House and do what they did last year to us as Americans. S1, we're hanging on the thread of two moderate U.S. Democrat senators to make sure nothing happens this year. But both of them have said they want election law changes. So there's still a chance something's going to happen this year. So one of us is going to be up there representing you next year. Even if we can buy time and we don't have that happen, the president with his executive orders can still try and change our laws slightly and tweak it. Our job is going to be to defend our limited government states' rights. Thank you.
John?
Thank you. The federal government has no business messing around with the states in voting laws. Period, end of statement. It's left up to the states. It's been pointed out numerous times. It's in the Constitution, it's in the 10th Amendment. And I would go so far to say that based on my experience, if you just like one thing that you like and say, well, we'll just federalize that, that's the wrong road to go down. Because once you have one thing, you give up 1 ounce of state power to the federal government, they're going to come in like a bull in a china shop and they're going to take it all eventually once the precedent is set. So voting needs to stay with the states. And again, let me just, not that I'm defending anything, but your state legislature has done everything possible, humanly possible with this governor we have to make sure that we are doing the right thing, defending your right to vote, make sure everybody has a right to vote. You passed by 64% voter ID. It's tied up in the courts. It shows the importance not only of having a good, strong legislature, but also the judges you vote for make a difference. They make a difference. I would argue that the most important election this coming November is those seats for the state Supreme Court, because they are wildly out of control on the left. So make sure you understand who you're voting for when you go into the voter booth come this November for the state Supreme Court. Thank you.
And that leaves Renee Borghese.
I think this one's kind of easy. I mean, you've heard everyone say that it belongs to the states, and I'm no different. But what I want to point out is that with 100% certainty, I will legislate along the lines of the Constitution of the United States of America. And what that means is leaving it at the states. Now, are there things we can do at the federal level to work alongside our state representatives? Absolutely. We can link arms and support each other so that we can ensure that our rights are taken care of and that the left doesn't come in and sweep them all away. But absolutely, this belongs at the states. We've all said it. Thank God we all agree, right? So we've got to maintain our Constitution with 100% accuracy.
So this next question, I believe, is probably near and dear to everyone's heart in this room, given the current situation. How will you address the current illegal immigration issues on the southern border? And we will start with Bill Brewster.
Well, I know how to run a track hoe, a backhoe, a front loader, and I got a lot of guns. I think I can solve the problem real easy. No, we need to secure our borders. The northern border, the southern border, every border that we need. We need to secure our country, take it back. The illegals that are here now, well, if they got bussed in through the night, we could fly them out through the night. I don't believe that any illegal here should have the right to our health care, our medical care, our banking, our food, or even housing. Now, Joe Biden kind of threw out there the $400 or the $500,000, let me give you that money to stay here for illegals. Well, I'll even go to Mexico for a vacation for a month and come back for $500,000. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But we need to take our country back. We cannot let the federal government control everything. The state needs to stand up too. If somebody trucks in a boatload of illegal aliens to my hometown now of Clayton, I'm going to be throwing a hissy fit. And it's going to make national news because I do have a voice and I will use it. Thank you very much.
John?
Thank you. I've already addressed this a little bit earlier when we were talking about crime. First thing we have to do is put into law that we're going to put up a border wall. Then we have to fully fund our border officers to make sure it's policed. But it's not only the southern border that we have problems with, it's also the northern border. We have to make sure that's secure because once you secure the southern border 100%, if that's possible, they're going to go somewhere else. And there's another border where a lot of people seem to forget about that's been attacked every single day, thousands and tens of thousands of times, and that's the electronic border. Duke Energy, for example, 10,000 attacks a day on the system trying to bring the grid down. What if one of those was really successful? It's the federal government's responsibility to defend the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We know for a fact, China, Russia, other unfriendly actors are trying to penetrate our electronic security, get into the Pentagon, the FBI, and our utilities, things like that. So there has to be a continued emphasis and more money put into defending the nation, the electronic borders that are being trying to be broken into and disrupt our whole country every day.
Renee Borghese?
I think the fact that we're spending more money to stop building the wall than we would have spent to finish building the wall speaks volumes. We absolutely have to secure our borders. But I think the other thing that is so frightening to me, not even some of the shenanigans that are going on down there, because certainly all of our communities are going to be look differently if we don't put a stop to this. But think about the property that's being bought by the Chinese in our nation. We're just sitting by letting America be taken over. Not just at the southern border, not just at the northern border. We've got to put some rules and regulations in place to prevent our nation from being consumed by any other country. And it's got to start now. We are way behind the eight ball. And it's just absolutely ridiculous that under the cover of darkness, we're shipping people in, we're giving them money. The last election cycle, I was a poll observer. And during that time, I watched a gentleman who did not speak English give 4 different addresses before he was coached by the person who was signing him up. That sort of thing has got to stop across the board. Thank you.
Devan?
Thank you. Illegal immigration is a huge issue, and it can be argued that it's one of the most pressing issues for the security of our country, not only for the illegal immigrants, but also for our schools and our neighborhoods. We have to secure the border. We have to finish building the wall. We have to fully fund, man, and staff and support our Border Patrol and our law enforcement on the border, because it's not just the illegal immigrants, it's not just the immigrants, it's the drugs and the weapons that they're bringing into our neighborhoods and our schools with them when they come. Look at the influx of fentanyl. Look at the influx of illegal arms that are coming through our porous southern border. And think about what that's doing to our community and how it ties back to the previous question on crime. it can be argued that illegal immigration and securing the southern border is just as much a national security issue as it is an immigration issue. And I think that we really have to control the narrative and remind people how important it is that our borders be respected and our laws be honored and abided. We have to secure the border, we have to quit the catch and release, and we have to do it now. Thank you.
Renee Elmers.
The issue on immigration is all of those things. It is a national defense issue, it's an immigration issue, and the need for immigration reform. It is also a border security issue, and it is about crime. Coming across the border illegally is a crime. We need to do everything we can. I've been to the border. I toured the border under Barack Obama. That's when the cages were put in place. That's when the humanitarian crisis began. It didn't begin under Donald Trump and the Trump administration. Barack Obama put that in place, and Donald Trump inherited it and all of the atrocities that come with it. Now, Donald Trump did something about it. With his America First policies, you saw the decrease in the number of illegal immigrants who were coming. The moment that Joe Biden sat down in the Oval Office, that number went right back up again. And we're all dealing with it. We absolutely have to deal with the issue. Our Border Patrol must be supported. Our law enforcement must be supported. Our ICE needs to be supported. We need to do all of these things. Back in 2015, we were this close to passing a major issue on border security, illegal immigration reform, and we couldn't do it. Republicans' failure to execute. We must change that.
Michael?
So I say we just continue to do the things that we did under President Trump, which I think is three things. A lot of people were saying that, the border wall needs to be finished. Well, actually, that's already happening right now. It's been going on for a couple of weeks. Texas, since everything's just there on the ground, Governor Abbott of Texas just said, well, since it's here, let's just install it. So they've been doing that for weeks now. Another aspect of it is, we need to make sure that for our Border Patrol agents that they're funded, that we have enough people in the position. You don't want one person for a couple miles of border wall. You need more people in those positions. And then also, they need the support too, not just financial support, manpower support, but political support from their leaders. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, when you have people come across the border, if they've already previously committed crimes in America, well, obviously crime is coming into the country illegally, right? So then you just take them and then you deport them. And I think that's it.
Nat?
I will take my full minute, but let me just say that I'm in favor. I'm an advocate of legal immigration. Thank you. The word. At the same time, every single person that spoke up here has brought some legitimate issues that affect us, right, at home. And it is not something that we can dismiss. We need to, I agree, we need to make sure that Trump's immigration policies are carried out. We need to make sure that we fund and build the southern border wall. We need to make sure that we're funding and providing resources to the law enforcement, not only that for the Border Patrol, but also the local communities who are on the border. Because of the resources that it takes there. And we need to encourage all the illegal aliens to come through proper channels and present themselves as legal immigrants.
Alan?
This administration has abdicated their responsibilities to provide national security and defense for our nation. We all take an oath. I took it when I was a member of the armed forces. Other people in their legislative positions have had to do the same thing. DHS, DOJ Health and Human Services, the president, the vice president have abdicated their responsibility. They have failed to perform their oath of office. We have a problem. 2 million illegals just captured last year. 2 million. That's not the ones that got through without us finding them. 2 million. That is a tragedy. They're trying to change the makeup of our voting population. They're trying to make a difference because they know how close it was. A lot of people don't realize this. 10,000 votes in Georgia, 20,000 in Wisconsin, 10,000 in Arizona. If you can flip those 3 states, and we're number 1 on their target list, North Carolina, because President Trump only won this state by 1.3%. They're coming with pitchforks. And this year, this 22, is the year we got to worry about. What I advocate for you is to try and make a difference, because 179,000 people crossed in December. That is the size of Knoxville, Tennessee crossing our border every month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to Tony.
Physical security, build a wall. Just build a wall, right? Maybe put some guys down there with some guns on that wall, right? We'll just treat it that's simple. That is such a simple and very linear fix. And it's clearly very much a Republican Party talking point. Build a wall, okay? But that's not solving our root problem. Another awesome talking point, chess, not checkers. And then we sit down and play Candyland. That's what's been going on with the Republican Party. So let's go for the root of the problem. Why are illegals trying to get here? Well, yeah, we have the greatest nation humankind has ever created. So yeah, you want to come here, of course. So I understand why. It's to cut this problem down at its roots. We should invest in our southern neighbors. There was this thing called the Monroe Doctrine, when it was all about investing in our southern neighbors. Maybe instead of spending billions on wars in the Middle East, we send our same assets, money, young, vibrant Americans to invest in our southern neighbors. And we address the entire demand. If they don't have a reason to come here, they don't have to come here. Let's create strong, viable neighbors in this hemisphere and stop worrying so much about what's happening on the other side of the globe.
Okay, moving along. Our next question is, what policies would you propose and/or support to get the country back to energy independence? And we'll start with Renee Elmers.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I had the honor of sitting on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. During that time, under the Obama presidency, we were able to work on and pass legislation that actually started exporting oil from America to other countries. That was the beginning of our endeavor into energy independence. Under Donald Trump, with his America First policies, we became the net exporter in the world of oil and energy. We need to get back there. You know, first day in office for Joe Biden, the first thing he does is shut down the Keystone Pipeline. We absolutely have to open the Keystone Pipeline and get that oil flowing through our country to where it needs to go. We need to decrease the cost of energy. We are seeing it every day in our bills at home and in our gas prices. That is the way that you do it. You put forward good, solid energy policy. We should be leading the country, or excuse me, the world, and yet Donald Trump was able to do it. Joe Biden has decreased our energy abilities. We must get back to America First policy when it comes to energy.
Alan?
We have lost our independence. we had the opportunity to make a difference in the world. The Germans did not want to do anything with us, so they decided to go with the Nord Stream pipeline. The administration pulled the sanctions on that, and we need to enforce them again so we can stop it. We need to go back to opening up our pipeline. We can take our natural gas, which we have hundreds of years worth of capacity, and we can become energy independent again. We don't need rolling blackouts in North Carolina to feel the pain that California feels. We don't need to have wind turbines freezing up in December through February like Texas absorbed last year. That's coming. We have failed to look at alternative opportunities for energy. We're shutting down nuclear power plants. Do you know that the country of France, 80% of their energy comes from nuclear power? Where the Germans are actually reducing the number, and they're going to go to the Russians. Right now, we have more than doubled our intake of imports of Russian oil because of this administration. That's money that they're using to fund what they're trying to do in Eastern Europe. We need to fix that, and we need to become energy independent. Thank you.
Renee Borghese.
So what Biden did when he shut down the pipeline was a perfect example of putting the cart before the horse. Let's just shut it down. Let's not think about how this is going to impact our nation. Let's not think about how we were once energy independent, and with the stroke of a pen, we are not energy independent any longer. Certainly, it makes sense for us to look at sustainable energy, absolutely. But you can't be so hasty with it that you cripple a nation. We've got to get the pipeline back running, absolutely, 100%. That's the answer, and then work from there. Then we look at what makes sense for sustainable energy, what makes sense in terms of nuclear power. You cannot, in any situation, put the cart before the horse. You can't just turn something off and expect that hoping and praying is a strategy to keep our nation moving. It's easy. Sadly, it's easy. We just need to get the pipeline going and then think through the steps that follow after that.
John?
Thank you. Easy question, incredibly complex answer that I'm just going to hit the high points in the next 90 seconds. Obviously, I agree. Well, all I have to do is look in the parking lot. It is mainly gas powered. There's a couple diesel trucks out there. They're not electric vehicles. We have to go back to becoming energy independent. That is the strength of our country. That's what drives business. That's what drives industry. I agree with everything that's been said about the pipelines. I mean, yes. What we can do at the federal level is increase funding at some of the national labs that deal with renewable energy. They've come through with something you may not know. Right now, a megawatt of solar costs $34 as opposed to a megawatt of combined cycle gas turbine, $44. You may not have known that, but it doesn't work all the time. It only works when the sun's shining. We have batteries. There's lots of different things. A leader in integrating renewable energy in this country has been the renewable labs and DARPA. We need to keep funding on those at the levels they're at and even increase it more. I'm a market guy, okay? If you want an electric vehicle, go buy one. But we don't need to put mandates out there from the federal government telling you that you're going to get $10,000 if you buy an electric vehicle, because that's not federal money, that's taxpayer money. So all these mandates, they need to go away. I could go on for hours, but I won't since I'm seeing the paddle waved at me. But thank you.
Tony?
You know, Renee, you said that hoping and praying. Something tells me our Democrat folks who are running the country right now don't pray too much. But no, yeah, same deal. You can't just turn off a switch and not have a resupply en route. It just doesn't work like that. That's what we saw. That's why we're paying over $3 per gallon at the pump. Clearly, we need to start making plans, right? America has a hard time seeing much past every 4-year presidential cycle. So yes, clearly we need to start making plans and investing in renewable energy resources. But right now, we have to start producing our own resources. We have vast amounts. And again, now I can loop right back around to my last statement. Our southern neighbors, Venezuela, right? It collapsed and crumbled right under our nose. It has huge oil resources. Haiti, so much natural gas, right there, right off of Miami. Again, why don't we invest in our southern neighbors, make a strong hemisphere instead of just a strong North America, and we all benefit. Now it's a two-pronged solution, right? We're talking about root solutions now instead of just, hey, just turn ours on, sanctions back over at Russia. The more sanctions we put on Russia, it only compels them to produce more. Free markets work, and we all know that. So instead of focusing on fighting on the other side of the world, let's focus on investing on this side.
Michael?
So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that could be said here about energy. So I believe that we should have multiple different sources of energy. We should have, coal, oil, nuclear, solar, wind, because if anything happens, then, we could catch ourselves with one of these other ways. So, I think we should diversify the energy portfolio rather than just close it down. That being said, I think that we should invest in more reliable energy sources, which is why I'm so big on nuclear. I mean, the fact that, France has between 70 to 80% of that country powered by nuclear, which has gone down over the decades because everyone's, anti-nuclear all of a sudden. We need to increase. In America, we are about 18%, I believe, powered by nuclear. And and the thing is, when you look at the French, they're that advanced, right? They're that far along. But it was us and the British that created nuclear in, the Manhattan Project, during World War II. So how is it that they've gone so far and we just haven't done anything with it? I think it's ridiculous. And people talk nowadays about mobile nuclear power plants. We've had mobile nuclear power plants, the USS Nautilus, the world's first nuclear powered submarine, in 1954. That's 70 years ago. And so I just think we need to look into that more. That's what I got.
Bill?
You're right, this is a complex question. But let's just start with the Keystone Pipeline. Not only did we lose the oil, but we lost American jobs, didn't we? There are people now that don't have what they had before Biden took office. And then people say, oh, well, we have clean coal. Anybody ever dug coal? It's dirty. It ain't clean. Solar wind does freeze up. I believe in the nuclear solution. I really do. You still have some byproducts of combustion, and as a business owner who employs employees, and every month when I sit down and I get my bills, I have a 7 and nitroglycerin right here, because I don't know what my gas bill is going to be. The highest that it's ever been for 12 vehicles that I had on the road was $11,000 for a month. That's pretty salty. So we need to find ways to get clean, reliable energy. We need to open up the pipeline until we can find that, or until our scientists can catch up to the technology to give us better energy.
Devan?
Thank you. And I love this one. I put 35,000 miles a year on a diesel pickup truck, which wasn't a bad thing about a year ago. It stings a little bit more today. Look, Tony says get back to the basics, right? The root cause, right? You want to become energy independent? Simple. Take the gavel away from Nancy Pelosi. Thank you, Roger. And ensure that AOC and the gang never has the opportunity to pass the Green New Deal. Step one, okay? By taking the gavel from Nancy and taking over the House, taking over the Senate, and taking back our country, you can do the single best thing that you can do to get energy independent again. And that's get out of the way, right? Everybody said it before, we've been energy independent, fast we're not anymore. Well, what changed? Government got in the way. Get out of the way. Let the market do what the market's going to do. Don't pick winners and losers. Don't fund solar panels and not fund pipelines. Don't pick in favorites and choose. Get out of the way and let American ingenuity and American enterprise do what it's going to do. And you watch it, we can get ourselves energy independent again if the government will just get out of the way.
And that brings us to Nat.
I guess you've heard it said before that the best prediction of the future is to take a look at the past, right? I believe heavily in renewables, and in fact attended some of the same solar openings that John had attended, ribbon cuttings and celebrations that this is our future. However, it's this much of our future for the next decade or even 2 decades until we are able to develop the technology in order to bring us full circle where we're not so dependent upon our natural resources. I was lucky enough to chair a committee for North Carolina called Explore Offshore, and that's what we were doing. We wanted to go out to the shelf and take a look and see what kind of natural resources we had available out there. All that kind of changed when President Brandon came into office and Explore Offshore went away. So, you know, I'm a renewable guy. I believe that's my children's future, but in reality, for us in the present time, we've got to look at our natural resources and how we can become independent. Again.
All right, so we have about 4 o'clock is our time to wrap up questions. So we have one more, and if we have time, I have a bonus question. If not, we'll wrap it up. But we're going to start out. The next question is, China is becoming an increasing threat to our country in a variety of ways. What issues with China would be your top priority, and how would you address them? And we will start with Alan. It was made in China.
I guess we'll quit buying Chinese microphones. We have pandered the Chinese for decades. We've moved them into the world, into the economic forum, and we actually cut them a lot of deals back in the Clinton administration, and we carried it forward with Bush too and Obama. China is our biggest nemesis. They have equal GDP, if not higher, you know, because they don't quite report it. If you don't believe they are playing with their currency, we got problems. We're not even holding them accountable for what happened with COVID-19. We need to get to the root cause of what we're going to do, because if you don't think that they're building their military, they are flexing their muscle in the Southeast China Sea. They're going to take Hong Kong back. We know that's going to happen. Right now, they're threatening Taiwan. They're buying valuable minerals all over, resources. We're fighting for a 2-year term. President fights for a 4-year term, sometimes a second 4-year term. The Chinese fight in years, in hundreds of years. They're building for the future. Their goal in 49, the 100th anniversary, is to be the #1 superpower. We're letting them do that. We failed to even have them be held accountable for their tariffs, $60 billion in arrears. We're trying to make a difference, but China is our #1 nemesis. Thank you.
Devan?
Thank you. The best thing we can do to influence our relationship with China is institute economic policies that make it possible and incentivize us to buy American. We need to build American, create American, manufacture American. We need to hire American. We need to be building these products and creating these products at home, because a made in the USA product will not get stranded on a ship off the coast of California. So we can give all the hypotheticals and the high solutions and theories we want, but the very best way to get at our relationship with China is to limit our dependence on Chinese good manufacturing. Pair that with a president that's not afraid to stand up to Chinese leadership like President Trump, and you've got yourself a pretty good situation. So in my opinion, as your congressman, my number one tool against China would be to facilitate jobs and economic policies right here in Central North Carolina.
Tony?
Why is China's GDP so high? Because we buy Chinese goods. America, we do it, right? How many iPhones we got in here? Okay, so if we go to DC and we say, hey, we're just going to make it tough, next thing you know, Americans don't have their iPhones. People are going to be upset, right? So the reality is there are some items that will always be made outside the United States. And again, just because labor is cheaper, American labor is expensive because we're skilled and hardworking. So a lot of times, we cause the problems a little bit ourselves. So we need to identify industries that can be manufactured here in the United States effectively, cost effectively, and incentivize them, incentivize states. We have unions up north that absolutely destroy the labor market. They make labor too expensive. So companies like Ford, General Motors, et cetera, go to Mexico and South Carolina and Georgia. How about a little more in North Carolina? Let's incentivize those companies to manufacture here. And then, again, there's never one linear solution to anything. If we invest in our southern neighbors, some of the cheaper items that will never be manufactured in the United States again can be made right there with our neighbors, not on the other side of the globe.
John?
Thank you. Thank you. Now, the question was to the threats and what we're going to do about China. First of all, militarily, they are a military threat, number one in the world against us. We need to maintain a strong military force for the United States of America, both in equipment and personnel. Second thing, I mentioned before, the electronic invasion of the United States. They don't dream up these things by themselves. They don't invent things, they steal it. Who do they steal it from? They steal it from us. We have to do a much better job, and that certainly, in my viewpoint, is a federal job to make sure that they're not having access to our internet to steal things. It's going to take a lot of work, and frankly, it's going to take a lot of money to get that better, but that's the second thing we have to do. And the third thing that we have to do to remain competitive as a nation is its tax policy. And when I say tax policy, most people's eyes roll in the back of their head and they go, oh God, there it goes again. But here's the fact of the matter is that we live in a capitalist country. If you're a factory owner, you can build your factory anywhere you want to. If it's cheaper for you to build and produce whatever you're making in China, a lot of people go there. We as a country made it easier for people to go there by having confiscatory tax rates for corporations. They went there where labor was cheap. There are things that we can do to get businesses back here where they can build American then. And we saw some of those during President Trump's era. The tariff war, it hurt some people, but you know what? They got the message loud and clear. That's all part of a greater tax policy that we need to look at and take China on. Thank you.
Okay, Bill?
I'm actually going to expand on that a little bit with the tariffs. Right now, the products that we make, that we ship to China, we pay a 25% tariff to ship it. Anybody got a wild idea how much they pay bringing their stuff into our country? 19%. So, how is, and I believe President Trump said, pay your fair share. Now, as a capitalist country, we all want to make money. We all have to make money to pay our rent, to pay our electric, to pay our cable, to buy our cell phones that come from China. Unfortunately, we're overlooking the big problem. We're not producing what we need to produce on a, let's just say, not a cheap margin, but a economical margin. Our labor rates are way too high for some things. Now, what is the mandatory minimum now? $15 an hour. I start my employees out usually around 20. So I'm well above that. But I am a skilled trade. We need to work on exporting, importing, making everything fair for us. Not putting a tax burden on us to send out any more of our products that is going to cost us 10 times to get it back. Thank you.
Michael?
So it's been touched on already more than once, but tariffs are a great way to hedge our bets against them economically. So, and then another advantage of tariffs is under the last administration under Trump, when those tariffs were initiated against China, there were a lot of companies, including Apple and others, who brought their businesses from China and from other places overseas, and they were bringing them back to America because it was cheaper and it was just better for them in general just to work here in America than it was overseas. So I think we should definitely do that. And then in terms of the Chinese military, I'm actually not as concerned as most people, because when I look at it,
officially the official number of the Chinese Liberation Army is 2.5 million people. If you look at America, you have over 70 million patriots here who own over 500 million guns and over 10 trillion rounds of ammo. So I'm not the best at math, but I think we'd be good to go there. I mean, a big reason why the Nazis lost against the Soviets was not just because the Nazis were fighting them during the winter in Russia, but the Soviets had more people than the Germans had ammo, and in this case, it's opposite. I mean, we got 10 trillion rounds versus a pilly couple of million of them. So I think we'd be good to go.
Renee Borghese.
So one of the interesting things that I noticed, working in a hospital environment at the beginning of this pandemic, is in the past we would go and look at the protective equipment that we have, whether that's masks or gloves or gowns or whatever it is. And prior to this, they all had labeling written in English. Almost immediately, that changed in the pandemic, and they weren't even trying anymore. The boxes for all of the protective equipment was all just written in Chinese. All of the equipment that we were using to protect ourselves from this virus was all coming from China. So we're just sending more money over there and over there. So I'll look back to, I'm not a young person anymore, so when I went to high school, there was a subset of folks that decided that they didn't want to go to the college route, that they wanted to work in a trade. And they could do that during their high school years, and when they graduated from high school, they could go out to the workforce with the trade. We've got to get back to that, folks. Really, the fact that people on the left are wanting to pay off college loans for no good reason, and people who agreed that, I want to go to college and I'm willing to pay the money to do it, we don't all have to go to college. We need to start producing things in ourselves, and we need to start training our young folks so that they have the skills when they get out of high school so that they can do that and that we're not dependent on China. Thank you.
Nat?
So not only economically or militarily, China probably legitimately is our largest threat because of the cyber intelligence. And that is something that in DC that I can tell you that I'll stand up and fight for. But we've got another threat coming from China as well, and that's real estate and the way that they are buying up legitimate companies and integrating the culture and degrading our values. How many of you watch television and see a commercial come on and it really kind of makes you mad, right? Even though it may be a legitimate product, you look at it and you go, that wouldn't have ever aired 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I think that is part of our issue or our problem as a people is the values that we're losing, the family values that are being compromised. And most of that comes from either one of the Chinese companies or the companies that are supporting that particular industry. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
And that brings us to Renee Elmers.
I think one of the important things for us to always remember is that China is not our friend. We may do business with China, but they are not our friend. They do not have America's best interest at heart. When we look at COVID, every day I spend 10 hours a day in PPE at work 4 days a week doing COVID testing in Johnston County in McGee's Crossroads. I want answers from China on why the COVID virus came to be. It was not a spontaneous occurrence, and it has mutated over and over again. I want answers. That's what I would like to do when I go to Washington. Then we need to get an American Republican president elected who is going to be tough on China the way that Donald Trump was tough on China when it comes to trade. We have a massive trade deficit. We need to be building, we need jobs in America that we are sending across the world. Made in America, Devan, you hit on this. Made in America across the world means a lot, not only here at home, but those products can be sold across the world. We need to be tough on China, who supports our enemies. Thank you.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we have time for the bonus question because we're a little bit after 4, but in case you're interested in the bonus question, we'd like to know, if you want to answer it at some point, how do you feel about changing the name of Fort Bragg? Would we like to hear the answer to that question? Well, Michael, we'll just start with you.
So I'll try and answer this as quickly as possible. So I saw an article in the Fayetteville Observer a little over a year ago now, which, strange to say, I can't find this article anymore. I wonder why, and I'll get into that. But what they were saying in the article was that when they originally established Camp Bragg, it was around 1917, so World War I was still going on, and there was a general who said, I believe it was to a captain, who said, hey, we want, because Fort Bragg was originally the home of artillery before airborne special forces, right? Now it's Fort Sill. Anyways, so he said, hey, we want to name this base after an artillery officer with a short name, 4 or 5 letters, right? And so the reason why they chose Bragg was because Bragg was an artillery captain during the Mexican-American War of 1848, not because he was a general of the Confederacy later, because for those who are not in the military, when you're made a general, you don't have a specific branch. You're supposed to be a subject matter expert in all the branches. So Bragg was not a general of artillery, but he was an artillery captain. And so they named it because of what he did in the Mexican-American War, not because of what he did in the Confederacy. Thank you.
Devan, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I would. I sure would. I don't care if it's changing the name of a military institution or if it's changing the picture on the front of a bottle of syrup. If we don't stand firm and hold the line, cancel culture is never going to stop. Call Roger again. Roger Shirt ought to be on TV today. Cancel culture. So I'm against changing the name for any facility, whether it be a military base or a bottle of syrup or anything else, because cancel culture has got to stop, and it'll only stop with us, and it'll only stop with us when we stand up, stand firm, and make it stop.
Well, I can't imagine that any of us are going to answer this any differently. I mean, the folks that I work with, the team of folks that when I go to work every day to pay the bills, they laugh at me because I'm always on a crusade against something, right? Coca-Cola used to be the beverage of choice. Like if I was going to have kind of splurge on calories, I would have a Coke. Coke went woke, right? They sent their employees to school to learn how to be less white. I don't even really know what that means. But we can't ignore our history. We are the greatest nation in the world because we had some missteps along the way, and we learned that that wasn't the right way to do it. But that doesn't mean we erase it. It's absurd. If we erase it, and all the folks that are in this room now are long gone, and the people who have followed us don't remember it, we're just going to repeat the same problems over and over again. It's nauseating. So that's how I feel.
Bill?
I'm going to give a little bit more of a complex answer. No.
Tony?
It's a hard one to follow, Bill. So yeah, history. It's a good history lesson. I always ask people when they ask me about tearing down this monument or tearing down that statue or changing the name of Fort Bragg. I said, well, are we going to tear down the Lincoln Monument? But wait, what? Lincoln? He's the best president ever. He's an honest Abe. Like, man, let's do some history. First president ever to suspend the writ of habeas corpus and imprison his political rivals. He also said in many of his own handwritten letters that he wouldn't free a single slave if he thought that's how he could win the war. So, we overlook all those little things because he ultimately did free the slaves, and he did a good thing. Because the reality is, human beings are also not linear, right? We have dualities. So he accomplished an amazing thing. But we like to ignore the historical part that he probably wasn't one of our greatest presidents. He was the closest thing we've ever known to a tyrant. Well, maybe except for right now we're experiencing something. So we just have to look at things a little more objectively and stop ignoring our history.
Absolutely not. Changing Fort Bragg's name accomplishes zero. And every time we allow these things in America to happen, we are succumbing to the left and the woke culture and the PC. And every time they accomplish something like that, they rewrite history. And we sit back and we watch it happen. And then we all wonder, how did we get here? How did we get here? Whether it's taking a knee during the Pledge of Allegiance, or whether it's turning your back when a prayer is being said, in a public meeting somewhere, throwing out God in our schools and in meetings. This has to stop, and it has to stop with us. And Republicans have got to stand strong on this, and I, for one, going to Congress, will never succumb to this type of action.
Yeah, I'm tired of being woken. Life the way that it was, the way that we were brought up, is what will maintain. Here we go, back to family values, right? Back to the values that we grew up with. And you're talking about making America great again. Well, we grew up in the Great Generation. So what we're talking about is, let's stop change. Let's stop the wokeness, because it's not doing anything but appeasing the 1.5% of the population who deserve a voice as well, but we don't need to change our way of life for them.
We have allowed this identity woke politics to control us, the 1.5% that Nat talked about. We should not be succumbing to them. You know, history is history, we can learn from it. I'm a proud Fort Bragg veteran, okay? I love Fort Bragg. I would never want to see it changed. Former President Trump said, you want the military forts, you want the Confederate generals? Are we going after Jefferson and Washington next because they had slaves? If you didn't see what happened at the Natural Museum of History a few weeks ago, they removed Teddy Roosevelt's statue. It will never end. If you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. Our job, I will not allow that to happen if I'm your representative. We need to stop this woke culture now. Thank you.
Yeah, up in Raleigh in the House and the Senate, they have this saying that it goes like this, says, it's all been said before, just not everybody said it. So it's all been said before me. I would just, and the answer to the question is no, I'm not for changing the name of Fort Bragg. That's, Bill had that shortest answer. I think there's one other thing that's instructive to us as citizens of this country, and that is that a lot of times people who are elected and go to D.C. kind of lose track of what's important. Focus on the important things. Let's focus on what makes your lives better. Let's focus on increasing business. Let's focus on maintaining a strong military. Let's focus on having a good tax environment, not just for citizens, but for corporations, so we bring some of those businesses back here. We reshore them. I mean, this is just another one of those will-o'-the-wisp things that somebody thought that they're going to run to the camera and get a lot of good PR. For their side, they did, but it doesn't do anything. It does nothing. It doesn't make our lives better. It doesn't make our country stronger. So if there's anything to take from this besides the clear no, it's the instructiveness that you need to send serious people to Washington, D.C. They're going to make sure that they keep their eye on the ball and do what's important.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm sorry that we went over, but I felt the read of the room. You wanted to hear that answer. So we are going to begin closing comments. As I told you, we'll start in reverse order. Just want to mention that Christine Villaverde, sorry, her table's in the back, so she's not here just because she's obviously she couldn't be here because she's ill, but I just want to make sure that you know that her table's in the back with her campaign manager if you want to stop by and chat with him. So, John, I hope you're not too comfortable down there, but you're first up.
I haven't been comfortable on this stool all afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity. And thanks to the Cumberland GOP for putting this on today. Hopefully it's been very instructive. I started out by saying I'm running because I want to save America. And I do, both from the external threats and the internal threats. I can stand up here and say anything about myself. Sometimes it's instructive to look at what other people and what other organizations say about you. The North Carolina Chamber of Commerce, I'm a jobs champion, have been every single term I've been up there. I think that's significant. The American Conservative Union, once again, I'm receiving an award from them for being conservative. That's being awarded down at CPAC this February. So I have the advantage of having been elected. People have scrubbed my record. They found me to be a tried and true conservative. I hope that what I've said here today feeds into that and that you can see that I am the right man for the job. I ask for your support and I ask for your vote.
I do want to thank Bree and the Cumberland County GOP. Alan Swain is the right candidate for District 4. I think I have the experience. I think I know DC. But let me tell you, what will I offer to you? What is my commitment? I want to help tame inflation. I want to help put food back on our shelves. I want our energy independence. I'm for term limits. I don't believe we should have people up there getting pensions living off the trough off our taxes. Okay, I commit to that and I'll sign whatever pledge you want. I will make a difference. I will hold this administration, accountable government, the White House, DHS, DOJ, all of them need us to stand up and fight for them. I'm not going to DC, but to represent you. I'm not going up there to make friends. As Harry Truman said, if you want a friend in DC, you better get a dog. I'm not going to make friends. Thank you.
Well, again, thanks to Cumberland County GOP for hosting this. This is a great opportunity for those of us that are in the district and those of us that are out of the district to be able to see your face and run over some of the issues with you. My name is Nat Robertson. Again, was fortunate enough to be your mayor in the city of Fayetteville, which is the 5th largest municipality in the state of North Carolina. Very proud of the things that we were able to accomplish. I beat Democrats before, and then I turned around and was able to work with them to accomplish some of the greatest things that this city has ever seen. So I ask you to look at our website, go to our social media pages. I even got a TikTok page. Don't tell your kids. But just look forward to representing you and doing some great things in Washington, D.C. like we've done here. I've got exposure to the federal government, working with the DOJ, working with FEMA, unfortunately, working with several of the agencies. I served on 2 different presidents' roundtables, one on infrastructure, one on community policing. Thank you very much. NatRobertson.org.
Renee Elmers, again, asking humbly for your support and your vote. I had the honor of representing Cumberland County in my first term in Washington. I believe we have to have a strong voice for our VA and for our military. This is a military county. This is an agriculture county. We need jobs. We need to move forward. I want to represent you in order to do that, starting with good constituent services, which I have experience providing through my office. I believe in America. I believe in America first. Donald Trump endorsed me in 2016. I was able to go to HHS and work for you there as well. Again, I ask you for your vote so that we can all make America great again. Thank you.
The 10 Commandments, the Constitution, and the constituents. I'm asking you to vote for me for U.S. House of Representatives. It's the actual correct term. The reason why you hear these same things from every Republican across the nation is they're repeating and regurgitating the same things. And the problem is the same things have gotten us to where we are right now. If it's not clear to you that one of these things is not like the others, right? It's because we have very, very different aspirations. 4 terms. If you do elect me, I'm promising you right now, that's all you can get from me. 4 terms. I've got a great life. I didn't intend on ruining it with a job in Washington, D.C. But our nation needs people like me that won't compromise and lay down. Thank you.
Okay, there'll be no more jokes on me. I'm the new guy. Everybody knows the new guy. You know I'm the new guy. But what you don't know is I'm a volunteer firefighter paramedic, retired military, retired twice in the civilian world. And the proudest thing that I've ever done is adopted my niece and nephew, who, God bless them, they're in college now, and I can't retire yet because my niece just told me she wants to be a doctor and I gotta pay for it. All right, one joke. You've got very fine candidates up here, very fine candidates. Choose your candidate who you think would represent your hopes, your dreams, where you think this country needs to go, and where we need to be at. Over there's these white boxes that they're going to put a tag in. I hope you fill mine up and then it overflows when they need another one, but if it doesn't happen, I just want you to know it has been an honor to speak in front of each and every one of you, and thank you.
Again, I am Renee Borghese, and over the course of my life, I have been tapped on the shoulder and asked to do things from various people. Sometimes I questioned why people were asking me to do those things, and I said, they must see something in me that I don't necessarily see, and I'll figure that out later. My husband is the one who tapped me on the shoulder and said, and he's been doing it for a lot of years now, and said that I needed to run for office. Of course, my husband loves me and supports me, right? Like I would expect that. When I told the team of people, I have about 100 folks on the team that I work with, when I told them what I was doing before I made any announcements formally, I wanted them to hear about it, I got an overwhelming response from them. And even out on social media, they said, you know what, she has fought for our team when it wasn't popular. She has fought for our team when it wasn't going to be contribute to her success in the organization, and I know she'll fight for us. So, Renee Borghese, thank you for your support.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Bree, and Cumberland County Republican Party for putting this together. What a marathon afternoon. Thank you all for sitting there most of the time and being part of this process. They say this every 2 years, but this is the most important election of our lifetime. Because we're at the end of the battle for the soul of our nation. The time for nuances is over and the time for middle ground is over. There's no more area of gray. You're either with us or you're against us. You're either for economic freedom or you're against it. You're either pro-life or you're not. You're either pro-Second Amendment or you're not. And there's too many people in Washington today that have been up there for too long or down there for too long that have forgotten what it's like to stand up for what you believe in, even when it might not be the most popular thing. I want to go to Washington because I want to fight, and I want to stand up for you, and I want to stand up for our nation. I've had enough mandates, mandating health care, mandating vaccines. I'm ready to mandate freedom, and I want to be your congressman to do it.
The Declaration of Independence says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe in that. I truly do. That's why, I went out to serve this country. I did the best I could. And the last position I had, I was a company commander in the Special Forces Command. And as a commander, it was my duty, my responsibility, my number one priority to take care of the soldiers that were entrusted to me, the sons and daughters of our nation. And I feel the same way about everyone in this room. And I know a lot of you guys probably heard in the news about a lot of soldiers getting discharged over this whole, vaccine mandate stuff. I'm one of those soldiers. I put in my religious request, because I believe in God that strongly, that the body is a temple, as it says in the Bible. And they denied it, and I'm done. But I want to continue that service. I made a solemn, lifelong oath to protect the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I really want to keep doing this. Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank all the candidates for your time. Having been a candidate and sat through one of these forums, I know it's a long time to sit up here, but you guys were fabulous. You honored the bell, and I want to thank Grace and Linda for keeping the time for us and keeping us moving. I want to thank all of you for coming out today, and don't forget to vote for your favorite candidate in the straw poll boxes. And with that, I will give it back to Bree Eldridge, our chair.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Our goal today was to provide an opportunity for you to see all the candidates, hear all the candidates, And if you want to talk to him after the event, you can ask him more direct one-on-one questions. We've hoped that this has been informative to give you some idea of who you might vote for in the primaries. And I had a request from one person. I just want to show of hands. Who right now has an active concealed carry permit? Awesome.